Welcome to this week's edition of World Crisis Radio. This is Webster Tarpley speaking from Washington, D.C. Today, of course, June 6th, 1944 to June 6th, 2014. And that's when we're recording the program here, Friday, June 6th. And the question, of course, for D-Day, why were we not celebrating this in 2012? The question of the second front in Europe, and in particular in Western Europe, not in North Africa, not the Italian campaign, especially the way the Italian campaign was conducted, not a Balkans campaign, but the second front in Western Europe. And the fact that this was delayed, we have to point out that D-Day was not, repeat, not the turning point of World War II. In Europe, on land, this was the Battle of Stalingrad. And there is no gainsaying that. Of course, in the Pacific, it was the Battle of Midway. In North Africa, it was El Alamein. But in the principal world theater of Europe, it was Stalingrad. So that leaves us with why no second front in 1942 or 1943, only in the middle of 1944? And the answer is the crack-brain scheming of Sir Winston Churchill, who wanted to bleed the Soviets white and then turn around and complain that they had come all the way to Berlin and Prague and come so far into Europe. And he, even at the Tehran conference, he was trying to scheme to get an invasion into what he called the soft underbelly of Europe, meaning the Balkans. He wanted to invade Yugoslavia and have everything come in through the port of Trieste up a single road, which I saw some years ago, more or less in its World War II condition. So this was geopolitics of the British type, so much so that there were reports of a meeting of von Ribbentrop, Nazi foreign minister, with Molotov in late 1943 or 1944 because of the impotence of the Allies on the European continent. Remember that de Gaulle had proposed in June 1940, 4 years before this, de Gaulle had recommended a national redoubt. And the national redoubt would have allowed French forces to remain probably in Brittany or Normandy, and then be reinforced by the British, and then by the United States. This was a definite possibility. This was ruled out by the fascist Marshal Pétain when he took power June 20th, 21st, 22nd of 1940. So the big question is, why was this not done much earlier? The United States had outlined a proposal called Operation Sledgehammer, if I recall correctly. Operation Sledgehammer would have been to seize an area along the far western coast of France. La Rochelle would have been another possibility, but I think probably Normandy, Brittany would have been the principal choices. And then defend that. Use strategic bombing, use your fighter aircraft, use your naval resources, and engage in that kind of fight early on. And the goal of all this is to end such a war, to end the war and to carry out the liberation then of Western Europe, but at the same time to relieve the pressure on the Soviets, not to maximize it, which seemed to always be the goal of Churchill. And, of course, this might then have led to a division of Europe after the war somewhat further east, and therefore a more equal balance of some sort, right? If that's what you were concerned with, then you should have been attacking already in 1942. And the fact that it was then not done in 1943, we can see the entire story of this in a very interesting book. Everybody should read it. It's called As He Saw It by Elliot Roosevelt, the son of Franklin D. Roosevelt, This outlines the clashes between Roosevelt and Churchill. They're very divergent views on imperialism, the future of the British Empire, future of India, and so forth. And I think he includes the Atlantic Charter meeting of August 1941, certainly includes the Casablanca Conference, and then the Tehran Conference, which was the first time in 1943 that Roosevelt gets a chance to meet Stalin. And as he writes, the contortions that Churchill would go through to try to postpone or simply to call off the invasion in Western Europe into northern France. This was, of course, quite obvious to all. So this unreconstructed imperialist, and that, I think, is the prelude to what happens today. Now, even though Nazism and fascism were defeated in 1945, several hundred miles to the east, they're still alive and well, and the Nazis and the fascists are attacking the city of Slavyansk. The Kiev fascist clique, once again, lashing out. Poroshenko's inauguration is tomorrow, and there's apparently an attempt. They want to give him the gift of the city of Slavyansk. Well, Slavyansk has become the Guernica of our time, except that all of the left liberal poobahs, or most of them, are completely indifferent to this. The Ukrainian forces, the fascist-led forces, have absorbed a rather humiliating defeat earlier in the week, but now they've got some tanks and they're attacking. And this is, frankly, anybody's guess. We've just also seen the diplomacy around this, right? This childish, hysterical fit by Kerry and Obama that they think they can isolate Putin. Putin, of course, has just concluded the $400 billion deal with the world's most populous nation, China. You won't die of solitude and loneliness if you're allied with China. And that's $400 billion plus the $70 billion in upfront investment. And we've also just seen Putin meeting with President Nazarbayev of Kazakhstan, one of the smartest, most intelligent leaders in the world, been around for about 25 years, knows what he's doing. And Lukashenko of Belarus, of White Russia, they have now founded the customs union, and I think as time goes on, that may be more attractive than many would assume at this point, especially when you start reading what the IMF killer austerity will look like, the genocidal austerity program. And remember, when you look at those conditions, right, the idea that you're going to loot the social insurance of Ukraine, you're going to loot the Black Earth region, you're going to loot the pipeline system, you're going to loot the coal and steel of the Krivoy Rog, Donetsk, Donbass. That is primitive accumulation. And that is what Monsieur Piketty does not seem to understand, that capital, the accumulation of capital, routinely outdistances the productive base. One of the reasons why finance capital deregulated is an impossible way to organize world production and society is simply that they don't understand the difference between productivity, production, and pure speculation. And when you see the speculative property titles, and the derivatives are, of all of them, the absolute worst, when you have 2 quadrillion minimum of bankrupt derivatives compared to a very low level of world production, the overhang is called fictitious capital. And the fictitious capital, those claims have got to be paid out of primitive accumulation. That is, looting, killing people, right? Sacking, and so forth. And we'll be back with more on that here on World Crisis Radio in just a minute. Welcome back to World Crisis Radio. We're coming from a quite successful appearance at the Left Forum in New York City. And the Left Forum was held at the John Jay College this year. And the event that I attended, along with Joe Calhoun of Colorado and Tom Kiley of Brooklyn, who does the INN World Report, very well attended, standing room only. The room was absolutely packed, 60 people plus. That seemed to compare favorably with most of these events. Of course, you can't compete with the foundation-funded poobahs like Amy Goodman, but other than that, a very respectable, formidable turnout. So the talk that I gave will be it'll be available, we hope, quite soon in a facsimile version. We had some technical problems with our recording equipment, and I'm wondering if you happen to attend that, right? I saw some people there who were filming the whole thing with cell phones, and I saw another guy had a rather exotic and modern recording device there. I'm wondering if you can let us know about it, because we'd like to have the actual viva voce version of it, but there will be the content version, and the slides will be, we hope, available soon, and we apologize for that problem, but of course we're not foundation funded, so we have to do things more or less on a kind of a shoestring. So Putin in Western Europe. Apparently Putin now talked to Obama for 15 minutes in Normandy today on the margins of this celebration. Of course, Queen Elizabeth II was there, dragging along Prince Philip. The Russian television RT has done a very good job in illuminating Prince Philip's Nazi connections. And, of course, the real big problem is that Queen Elizabeth's uncle, Edward VIII, was an active Nazi supporter, close friend of Hitler, and had to be dumped. That whole story with the divorcee and Mrs. Simpson was simply a cover for the fact that he was much too much in Hitler's pocket. And had Hitler invaded Great Britain and succeeded, then there's no doubt that Edward VIII would have become the regent or the ruler of the Nazi puppet state of Great Britain. So that's somewhat embarrassing for them. There were then yesterday meetings at the G7. That was on Wednesday and Thursday in Brussels. But we've also had Putin meeting Merkel, Putin meeting Hollande, Putin meeting Cameron shooting his mouth off. There was talk of an ultimatum by the United States and Great Britain, which is to say, Putin, stop the destabilization of Ukraine within 1 month or face more sanctions. I think it is extremely unwise to launch ultimatums to the Russian Federation. And I think this gives us a new principle of international law. In other words, is organizing the destabilization of a country, is that now going to be promoted to an act of aggression? It may well be. But this would also then include, if you had the United States attempting to organize a color revolution, which they do all the time, that a color revolution could be grounds for sanctions. In other words, if you've got the U.S. organizing a color revolution against some country, could that country then turn around and embargo the U.S., declare sanctions? Could they default on their debt? Suppose the U.S. tries to organize a color revolution in Venezuela, which I think has been going on now for about a year. Could Venezuela then turn around and say, guess what? You're destabilizing us with your color revolution. Everybody knows what these are. Therefore, we will not pay. In Poland, Obama made some very unwise, intemperate statements. I think this is because Obama feels like he's under attack on the home front for many reasons, having to do with Syria, having to do with Iran, having to do with Ukraine. Some of this is summarized in the Bergdahl incident, which I'll try to talk about here in just a minute. But you had the idea that he was attempting to ratchet up the rhetoric, partly to play to his Polish hosts, of course, but I think partly also to try to diminish the effectiveness of the rhetoric of the Republican warmongers. Now, the Republicans are out in the open as warmongers, right? You've got Rand Paul, who used to object to drones. Rand Paul wants the 5 people in the Bergdahl deal assassinated by drones. Rand Paul has now responded to the warmonger shift of the Republican Party. He's tailing after it. So you libertarians, you put that in your pipe and smoke it, right? Your little man there turns out to be absolutely unprincipled scoundrel and adventurer, as I have always argued. But Obama, when Obama gave that speech with in Poland, right, in Warsaw, it seemed to me that his warnings about Ukraine and so forth, the posturing that he went through, that was a new level. And again, could be Poland, but it could be the putschists here at home that have got him worried. So that's Obama's a tour, and of course now there's all sorts of talk about increasing the NATO presence in Eastern Europe. This is extremely unwise, and it's also expensive, and it will necessarily lead to a backlash. I think there's a general awareness that Russia will not and cannot tolerate Ukraine entering NATO. Poroshenko seems to have interpreted his election victory, if that's what it was, with other candidates beaten, terrorized, forced to drop out, with the threat of the opposition Communist Party to be banned. That was in the middle of the campaign, as we saw assassinations, kidnappings, and genocidal events like the Odessa massacre of May 2nd, all of that in the middle of the campaign. But Poroshenko thinks he has a mandate, but it's a mandate to kill. So he has, since the so-called Ukrainian election, he has escalated that attack with dire consequences. Now, the Ukrainian forces doing rather poorly. 6 Ukrainian aircraft and helicopters shot down just in the past few days, and quite a number of tanks seem to have been knocked out. So that's Ukraine. We have